Good afternoon, and welcome to a special report from the Black Press of America. Just 2 days after becoming lead prosecutor in the murder of George Floyd, Attorney General Keith Ellison asked for time to thoroughly review all the evidence in the case that was available even while the investigation was ongoing. He said he knew it would be a lot to ask people in communities who have suffered decades and centuries of injustice to be patient and to wait longer for justice. But it didn't take long for Attorney General Ellison to act. He filed an amended complaint that charged former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin with murder in the second degree for the death of George Floyd. Then he issued arrest warrants for the 3 other Minneapolis police officers involved in the killing of Floyd. In filing the charges, Ellison said, in the final analysis, a protest can shake the tree and make the fruit fall down. But after that fruit is in reach, collecting it and making a jam must follow. We welcome the Attorney General of Minnesota, the representative, too. We could say representative, right? Keith Ellison. We also have our president and CEO, Dr. Benjamin Chavis, and from Minneapolis, right there on the front lines, is one of our esteemed publishers, Al McFarland. Dr. Chavis, take it away, please.
Well, thank you very much. First, I want to say to the Honorable Attorney General Keith Ellison, thank you so much on behalf of the Black Press of America for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to Black America, to speak to the Black press, and to speak to all Americans about a case that has now not only captured the attention of millions of people in the United States of America, but millions of people throughout the world. Thank you, Attorney General, for your leadership, and thank you for your courage in your acts as Attorney General. And I can just say on behalf of the 230 member publishers of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we appreciate your leadership. And if there's anything that we can do from the Black press perspective to get the truth out of what is going on in Minneapolis and Minnesota, rest assured that the Black press, we got your back, Attorney General. I just want to say that up front. You know, there are a lot of people that will try to find ways and means just to criticize anything. But one of the reasons why we need African Americans as Attorney General, or as Governor, or as Senator, or as Congressman, or as Prosecutor, or as Chief of Police, we do make a difference when we can get in these places of decision-making authority. So I'm going to pass now to my distinguished colleague from Minneapolis, the editor and publisher and founder of Insight News, our brother, and he will, Al McFarland will continue, but I'll be in the thing. I just want to say thank you, Keith. I want you, and I can tell you that there are millions of brothers and sisters, man, who are prayerful and grateful for your leadership.
Can I offer my thanks to you, Dr. Ben? You and I have been friends for a while, and I just want to say I appreciate all that you've done over the course of your life, the whole body of work, standing up for justice. And so to see you doing what you're doing now is no surprise, but it is heartwarming. So thank you again, and I appreciate it. And Al and I are very good friends and hang out all the time, don't we, Al?
And neighbors as well.
Yes, we are.
We go back a long, long time. But, you know, Keith, I want to say, first of all, it'd be great to have you give a brief update on the process that brought you into the case. This case was originally created at the Hennepin County prosecutor level, Mike Freeman, county attorney. A lot of resentment, resistance, questioning in the community about whether the capacity existed or the will existed. And people were calling for the creation of a special crop prosecutor or for the governor to ask your department to take over this case. Would you walk through that process?
Yeah, and I want to say preliminarily that you all know me as a very candid person who just tells it like it is. This is one of those environments where I really just can't tell it like it is, like I like to and generally do. The reason is that under the rules of professional responsibility, actually Rule 3, I have to curtail comments to the press whenever I'm in the middle of a pending case, and whenever what I say could somehow prejudice a jury. I'm not going to give anybody a stick to beat me with, you know, and so. Forgive me I'm admitting right up front, I'm going to be dodging some questions, okay? So that's the best candor that I may be able to give today. But in answer to your question now, let me say that, over the last weekend, County Attorney Mike Freeman, who I've known for years and is a friend, said, look, we could use some help in this case. How do you feel about being a part of it? I said, well, I'm not asking you for the case, but if you're asking me to be involved, we're never going to say no when the cause of justice comes calling, right? We're never going to say no. And so I know my way around a criminal court. I mean, a lot of people think of me as a politician. The truth is I'm really a trial lawyer. I mean, from 1990 up to 2006, I was in court every day, defending lawsuits, representing people, prosecuting civil lawsuits in the area of civil rights. I'm more of a trial lawyer than a politician any day and every day of the week. Al, you know that. And so I said, sure, we can do it. I called my staff. I asked them, do we have the ability to help out? They said, yeah, we prosecute people across the state of Minnesota every day. But the question is, should we? So we had an internal conversation and we said, yeah, to Mike, we would be involved. And I said, but the condition is that we're going to look at everything. He said, yeah, I want you to look at everything. So we took the file, we looked at everything. That Sunday, the governor, who I served 12 years in Congress with, know very well, is a good friend, Tim Walz, he said, hey, man, would you be involved in this case? I said, yeah, Mike called me earlier, and I think that we feel that we can make a contribution, but I want to make it clear, I'm not lobbying for this case, but we do have the capacity, and we are willing. And so we agreed to get in. The governor said, I want to appoint you. The county attorney said, I'd like to invite you. So we're coming into this thing from both sides. I think that we're better off now because we have the resources of the state. We're able to tap into resources of the county, which they have. It is important to point out that the only successful murder prosecution of a police officer happened in Hennepin County. There have been others. Philando Castile, who was prosecuted in Ramsey County, was acquitted. No, he was not acquitted. The police officer who killed Philando Castile was acquitted. And so, they have resources that we're not going to turn away. There have been people who said, well, we're not sure we feel great about Mike Freeman. I said, do you feel good about getting a conviction on these 4 officers who I believe, based on our complaint, review of the evidence, review of the charges, we believe that these are appropriate charges, which we believe they should be convicted on? They said, yeah, we believe that. I said, well, then don't come into my kitchen and tell me how much salt and pepper to use. Let us do our job and let us use the resources we need available to us. There is no question I'm the lead prosecutor on this case. Nobody's going to tell me what I need to do. I mean, we're in control of this case, but in terms of advice, consulting, working with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office is a resource that I am not putting on the side, because I'm not taking this case and then not be in a position to do every single solitary thing I can to gain a conviction, including working with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Attorney, as you know, U.S. attorneys are appointed by the administration that's in office. And yet this particular U.S. Attorney, Erica McDonald, she said, we're into the cause of justice. You want to work with us? She said, one team, one goal, one mission. We want to help. I said, come on in. And so we're working together, county, Attorney General's office, U.S. Attorney, all to bring forth justice. I pledge my sacred honor to pursue justice relentlessly. And I promise to everybody that I told them beforehand, I would charge the highest ethical charge I could, which means that if I don't have facts to support a charge, I'm not charging it out. And so I charged, we went from 3rd-degree murder to 2nd-degree murder, and we charged the other 3 with aiding and abetting. And so now we are meeting constantly and engaged in full-on trial preparation. There are court appearances coming up for the defendants this Monday. And, we believe that given the charge, given everything, that substantial bail is in order, and then after that, we're going to get a scheduling order, and then we'll be getting ready for trial. I want to tell you all that I'm always available to share information that I'm able to share. But just to tell you, just to let you know, I've told my staff after Monday, we're going to begin to curtail our public statements. But today, we're here to talk to you and glad to do so. And I'm not saying if you call me, I'm not going to answer. You know, I always answer. But given that ethical rule, and given that there are some people who don't want to see defendants who happen to be police officers or former police officers held accountable, that we can't afford to do anything that's going to jeopardize the prosecution. So After Monday, we may not be really vocal, but if you call, we'll answer, and we'll always see what we can do to help.
Well, thank you very much, Attorney General Ellison. Your explanation was very substantive and detailed, and it's providential that we're having this call before Monday. we realize the truth of the matter is, you know, that in many other cases outside of Minnesota, there's always some technical thing that happens where the police officers get off. So we don't want to contribute to, we don't want to give any exit. We don't want to give any provocation that people could utilize as some technical reason to let the officers off. I want to just, if you allow me, the Floyd family, tremendous African-American family, George Floyd himself. Now that we know more about him, it's a shame we have to find out about his great life as a result of his tragic death.
Right.
And about the Floyd family. I'm a native of North Carolina, and he's a native of North Carolina, George Floyd. There's a memorial service going on right now as we speak in Rayford, North Carolina.
That's right.
And then the funeral will be on Tuesday in Houston. And of course, we all witnessed the memorial service that was held there in Minneapolis this past week. What I wanted to ask you, from your perspective as the Attorney General of the great state of Minnesota, what impact is this having on not only African-American family life in your state, but, you know, I can tell you, man, I hear from parents, mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters all over the country. Sometimes, man, they're afraid to let their kids go out the house. They're afraid to drive down the street. You know, it's driving while black, walking while black, jogging while black, now breathing while black. Just
don't forget bird watching while black.
That's right, bird watching while black. That's living while black, no matter what you're doing. But as the Attorney General, I think, speak to what is the authority of the Attorney General of a state on matters of racial justice.
Well, let me just say very quickly, the Attorney General represents every state board, state commission, and state agency. That means Department of Corrections, Department of Public Safety, the Board of Pharmacy, the Board of Cosmetology, over 100 boards, commissions, and agencies. We are their lawyers. I'm the governor's lawyer, the Secretary of State's lawyer, the state auditor's lawyer. And we also, so we do all of that representation of government agencies. The other thing that we do is we have what they call parents patriae authority, which means that on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota, we can sue anybody who we believe is violating the laws and undermining the public interest of the people of the state of Minnesota. So we prosecute wage thieves, companies that steal wages, and they keep our unit busy. We sue people who engage in deceptive practices, trying to lure kids into vaping or tobacco. We sued Comcast, we sued CenturyLink, we investigate Frontier in the area of telecom. We are looking into how we can protect people from environmental hazards and climate and deception in the area of energy policy. So in the area of racial justice, you know, it runs a gambit, right? We make sure, since I've been there, that if you are dealing with a state agency, that you will be treated with fairness by that agency. If there's systemic racial injustice, we represent the Department of Human Rights, and we can represent the state of people in the state of Minnesota in pursuit of that. And we can, in criminal matters, we represent any county that asks us to intervene, or when the governor asks us to. And we also have something that's sort of like our convening authority. So as a statewide public official, me and the Commissioner of Public Safety, John Harrington, great guy, African-American, former police officer, police chief, we convened last year a working group on reducing deadly force encounters with the police. So all 2019, we met 2 or 3 times a month and pulled together a report, which we issued in February, on the issue of reducing deadly force encounters with the police. And but when we issued the report, we were working hard to get attention of the legislature and other bodies. Wasn't easy to do so, but now with this tragedy, the legislators are really looking at that report. So, but both of us felt like, look, we're African-American men. We're aware of the unique and tragic relationship that Black communities have with police. If we're in these jobs with these fancy titles and we're not willing to work on reducing deadly force encounters with police, then what are we even in these jobs for? So we got into it. We knew we were either going to piss off the police or the community because the expectations are super high. But we figured we're going to walk into this gauntlet anyway, because if you know what it's like to be on the wrong side of the justice equation, you've got to do all you can to fix that when you're in a position to do so. And so John and I did that. More than that, we initiated a group of task force on hate crimes. And so we did that work. We did something on reducing drug prices. Now, Dr. Ben, you might think, well, what does reducing drug prices have to do with Black folks? How many Black folks do you know who can't afford their insulin?
That's right.
Or their hypertension medicine? Or their Daraprim, because Daraprim is a drug that a lot of people dealing with HIV/AIDS deal with. I mean, we have found that when it comes to pharmaceutical pricing being out of reach, that there is a clear disproportionate impact on communities of color, although it's a problem that a lot of people, white people even face, but it hits us harder because, as you know, when this community gets a cold, we get the flu, man. Well, more specifically, when they get the cold, we get the COVID, right? Exactly. So, so we've done a lot of things, public stuff, just convening. And then to add to that, Dr. Ben, we work with DAGA, the Democratic Attorney General's Association, a group called NAG, National Association of Attorneys General, and me and all 5 of the Black state attorney generals went on a trip to Ghana, where we talked about everything from international sex trafficking, trafficking in persons, labor trafficking, where we talked about cybercrime, and we just worked with Black prosecutors in Africa from all over the continent, where we talked about issues of U.S. African cooperation to stop international crime, which is involving in trafficking in persons, and fake medicines. If you want to take your medicine, it needs to be what it says it's represented to be. So, we really have a great relationship with prosecutors and attorneys general throughout the continent at this point. And so that was a very good thing. So, there's just a range of things that we do, one of which is prosecute crime, and even including when those crimes are committed by people who are entrusted with guardianship. And I'm talking about the police, and that's what this case is all about.
Very good.
Yeah, and Attorney General.
Keith, take a minute if you would, and just sort of give our viewers and listeners the distinction between, say, first-degree murder, second-degree, third-degree, and manslaughter. Some people are not clear on why the charge went from third-degree to second-degree, and also talk about the sequence of events that led to the charging of the 3 other officers who were present and involved in that arrest and ultimately the death of Mr. George Floyd.
So I'm going to have to skip over some of the detail because some of it involves internal deliberation. Mm-hmm. So forgive me for that, but I'm just telling you up front, I'm not going to be as specific as I usually am. But let me just say that when we were invited into the case by the governor and the county attorney, our condition was we're going to take a fresh review of the evidence and the charges. The county attorney said, absolutely, that's what we want you to do. So we got in more evidence. There was some medical examination reports. There was some body cam. There was a bunch of stuff that came in after the first set of charges. We reviewed all that. We had we got our heads together when we decided that the appropriate charge was second-degree murder and aiding and abetting by the other individuals. Now, what is the difference between these charges? First-degree murder involves premeditation and deliberation, planning. The amount of time that it takes to plan really is not defined by law deliberately. They don't define that deliberately, but it does involve, I am going to kill you, I'm planning to kill you, and then I execute on the intent to kill you and then kill you. That's premeditation. Typical case could be somebody saying, you know what, I want the insurance money of somebody who I'm the insured, and so you kill that to collect the money, right? I've had cases where somebody was accused of planning to kill their wife so that they can collect the insurance policy that they took out on her. That's classic premeditation. They thought about it, they did it. Somebody said, we're going to kill the clerk at the grocery store and rob the store. Classic premeditation. Then second-degree murder is where you intend to kill somebody, but you didn't arrive at the place with that plan. That somebody disrespected me, you don't talk to me like that. Anybody talks to me like that, I kill them. So like it's fast, right? So there wasn't like a plan. You just arrived on the scene, something happened, and you intentionally kill that person. There's another type of second-degree murder, and that is where you may not intend to kill the person, but you intend to commit a felony, which results in murder, the death of a person, a homicide. So you intend to rob the place, somebody gets killed, that's felony murder. You intend to commit an assault, somebody gets killed, felony murder. You intend to do a burglary, somebody gets killed, felony murder. There has to be an underlying felony that is causal in terms of the death of that person in order to get that type of second-degree murder. We believe that this case applies, so we charged it. In the other kind, in manslaughter, it's where a person dies as a result of inherently reckless behavior, inherently dangerous behavior, but you didn't necessarily intend to kill that person, but your conduct caused the death of that person. So, a manslaughter could be, take an example that's very different from this case. You shot into a house. You didn't know anybody was in there, but somebody was, and you killed them. I didn't mean it. I didn't do it. I didn't know. Yeah, well, you do something that wild and out of control, you could be charged with at least manslaughter, maybe more. Then you take into something like aiding and abetting. If you assist, aid, help, counsel, protect somebody in the commission of a crime, then you've aided and abetted them. That's under Minnesota statute 609.05. The first word is, aid, and we believe this case affects fit aiding, in that the other ones either sat on top of, if you look at the video and look at it for yourself, they either sat on top of the victim, or they protected and prevented others from assisting the victim, as the whole crowd was saying, help him. The victim was saying, help me. And that was disregarded and ignored. And yet, everybody continued to assist in what we argue in our complaint was an assault, which resulted in the death of Mr. Floyd, which is second-degree murder. So, you could read the complaint yourself. I urge everybody to do so. It is okay for me to say what's in the complaint, but to go beyond that and talk about the evidence that we expect to present is something that is frowned upon, and so I won't do.
Good.
Yeah, Attorney General Ellison, we always see the reluctance of police departments to make arrests of police officers, and even with what's happened with the videos, et cetera, we see it even still around the nation. Can you speak to that, the reluctance of police departments to make an arrest?
I would say in general, not specific to this case, but in general, misconduct and even criminal activity by members of law enforcement is under prosecuted. There are a whole range of things that prohibit and impede accountability. One of those things is just culture. I mean, how many cop shows have you watched in your life, right? If you flipped on the tube today, you'd turn on Cagney and Lacey, or you turn on Rizzoli and Isles, or you turn on the Mod Squad. But if you look in the reruns, or you turn on Law and Order, or they go on and on. Hawaii 5-0. Cops in Hawaii. I mean, there's probably a cop show in the cold part of the world. I mean, it's everything. And so there is an element of culture, and now we got reality TV. And who didn't watch Cops? Who doesn't know the song "Bad Boys, What You Gonna Do"? Have you ever seen police misconduct on that show? No, they edited it out. So I mean, there's a culture, that we're just all used to. But here's the thing: under the law, there is no greater credibility for a law enforcement officer than any other witness. They're just a witness, and the judge will not say you must believe them more. The judge will say you believe them if you want to believe them. That's what the judge will instruct the jury, and it all has to do with whether you think what they say makes sense, is consistent, and there are other factors that the judges will instruct the jury on. But at the end of the day, there's no law that says that uniform means that you're more of a truth teller than somebody else, right? And so, so I'm not here to try to condemn all police. I'm not here to try to lift up all police in terms of I'll just say that they are selected from the human race, and therefore, whatever you get out of the human race, you might find in them too, and that includes great heroism and also dishonesty.
In American society today, we appear to be at another tipping point, Attorney General Ellison. And of course, you mentioned the culture of police. Police culture is part of the larger culture of America. And one of the things that's so distinguishing today about all of the protests that are going, the protests are multiracial, they're multilingual, they're multi-ethnic. It's part of the whole human family. And so that gives rise to a lot of people's expectations and hopes and prayers even, that maybe now, as tragic as the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd is now exposed for the world to see, the response has been an enduring, expanding call for equal justice, for racial justice, for more diversity and inclusion in law enforcement, more diversity and inclusion in the judiciary, more diversity and inclusion in corporate America. I know Al and I, we're very interested that Minneapolis and Minnesota happens to be the home of 20 of the top Fortune 500 companies. And we are hoping that this moment in American history will not be lost for some real systemic change, not only in terms of public policies, but also the culture, the way we feel. I used to work with Dr. King when I was a teenager. He would always say, you can change the laws, you can change the policies, but until you change the hearts of men, women, and children, the hearts. Do you believe, I'm just asking for your perspective, that we may be at a moment where we can get the hearts of all Americans to change more favorably towards seeing our democracy? The strength of our democracy is inclusion and diversity, not exclusion and oppression and separation and domination, quote unquote. And it's amazing that the President of the United States now is calling for domination of our communities by the police.
Yeah, well, Dr. Ben, I do believe we're at an inflection point. But I think Stacy, as he introduced me today, quoted from something that I said at the press conference, which is, you can shake the grapevine and the grapes will come down, and that's important. You got to have the protests. You got to get the grapes. You got to shake it up. But if you don't then collect those grapes and make that jam, then those grapes rot on the ground. So it is very important that we begin now on the 12th day, and I'm not calling for the protest to stop, or by no means. But what I am saying is we do need to really kind of begin a conversation around when are we going to get there? When are we going to change, use of force, chokeholds and restraints? The Minneapolis City Council, I'm so proud, passed a ban on these chokeholds and restraints. And so, the state of Minnesota is doing a 10-year review of pattern and practice of discrimination in Minneapolis Police Department. These are substantive things, but they're not going to happen with a bullhorn out in the street. They're going to happen in a room, and they're going to happen slow, and it won't be dramatic. And so we're going to get to a point where you don't want to go to the meeting anymore because you're tired of it, and you argue with these people, and the real grind of social change. You talked about Martin Luther King. The public knows Martin Luther King is a man who made great speeches, but so much of what he did was like going nose to nose with the discrimination establishment. Yes. You know what I mean? In rooms where the door was closed.
That's right.
Right? Wouldn't he go in there and close the door and say, "Okay, we're gonna sit in unless you get rid of these signs that say we can't be equal people"? And then how long did some of those meetings go? Late into the night, right? Days, right?
Late into the night. And his most profound writing wasn't at the Lincoln Memorial. It was from the Birmingham jail. Dr. King himself was arrested and prosecuted for nonviolent civil disobedience.
Yeah.
I know a little something about that myself personally.
Oh, yes.
But
that is an undertold story, Dr. Ben. One day you should tell them what people who know, but like for this generation coming up, I think they really need to get a primer on your history.
Right. I'm writing that book. I'm writing that book now. The Wilmington 10. I'm writing that book now.
The world needs that book, man.
I got you.
Yeah.
Al?
Keith, Dr. Ben mentioned the economic consequence. This might not be your wheelhouse, but it is in the sense that you are one of the constitutional officers of the state of Minnesota. For instance, when the state first dived into its response to COVID-19 and the governor declared a state of emergency, the power of running the government fell to 5 people, among them you, Lieutenant Governor, the governor, and I think the Secretary of State, and maybe one more officer. And so you have considerable power, considerable authority. And my question is, the state did move to address the economic impact, the consequence of shutting down due to COVID-19. Now, on top of that, we have the experience of shutdown and a lot of damage along Lake Street in South Minneapolis, along University Avenue in St. Paul, and in our neighborhood, North Minneapolis, along West Broadway. I'm thinking that to restore these communities is going to require an investment in the billions. What do you think our state should do, and how do we, as a community, begin to mobilize a response that attempts to bring targeted reinvestment in Black and Brown communities, particularly ones that were affected by the uprisings, the rebellion, the riot, if you want to call it that came out of the protests? How do we ensure that businesses that were in place get the help they need, but also that entrepreneurs in Black and Asian and Latino and Native communities and white people who are residents of our community have the resources they need to bring their businesses not only back online, but to a point of thriving? That means we have succeeded to use this opportunity to transform our community economically, morally, and other ways as well, that really address all of the historic disparities that we are known for here in Minnesota.
Well, Ali, as you know, I'm committed to economic justice. I believe so much of American racism manifests as and through the economy. When you are told you can't rent here, that's an economic transaction. You're being denied based on your race. One of the issues that I will be working on is to making sure that every insurance company treats the communities with fairness and does not try to hold back on coverage when that is necessary. That's something that my office, together with the Department of Commerce works on a lot. And in this situation, they're going to have to do their duty. And we're comfortable with that work, and we do it all the time. I'm also committed to the rebuild. The economic conditions need to change in many ways. Just like the Kerner Commission report said, it may have been bad policing may have been the spark, but the kindling for it is always everything else going on around or not going on around. And so I will be insisting upon that. I'll be a voice from that. And I just hope that we'll stay in touch. I advocated, to make sure we had Black business inclusion in the COVID response. You're aware of that. And I will continue to be a voice for that. This civil unrest happened because of deprivation. Why would we compound it now? Let me just add this too, because maybe Stacy and Dr. Min don't know, but maybe you do know. I don't know. I don't want to assume, but I will say that the average income in the state of Minnesota overall is about $68,000 a year. The average income for Black families was $31,000, dropped to $27,000, and maybe now it creeped up right before the pandemic, and now probably dropped again. And so when the average family income is 30 grand, that's struggling right there, man. That's struggling, right? And rent eats first, right? So, a lot. And by the way, rents in North Minneapolis and in Black communities are not dramatically lower than they are in other places because of housing discrimination. The rental market for Black people is more limited, and so the supply is limited. So, there you go. So I'll just count on me to continue to be an advocate from the Attorney General's office, an advocate as a statewide constitutional office holder, and always with ears open to the needs of entrepreneurs and business people and workers. Can I just add that, I started a wage theft unit at the Attorney General's office because we got a lot of reports. On people, being promised sometimes not very much money, $10 an hour, $15 an hour, $9 an hour. And yet they weren't even getting that, they were being forced to work through breaks and weren't being paid for it. The employer on the payroll would act like, well, you had a 15-minute break this morning. And it's like, I didn't get no break. You told me that they were too busy and I couldn't have my break. So you cannot deduct my break and then not give me the break. That's wage theft. So we sue people for stuff like that. We do it a lot. And to me, the reason I left Congress and came to the Attorney General's office is because I wanted to help people afford their lives and live with dignity and respect. That afford their lives. I have a podcast called Affording Your Life. And if you can't afford your insulin, you can't afford your life. If you're not getting your pay, you cannot afford your life. And so where am I going to stand on this issue? I'm going to help people afford their lives in every single aspect of the family budget.
Well, look, we want to take your podcast. We want to put your podcast on our national network.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that. Affording your life.
Affording your life. I like that.
Yeah.
Stacey,
we are
questions in from the audience.
Yeah, and we are again live with the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, the Black Press of America, and many of our publishers. We have Al McFarland on, but we have many watching, including our chair, our national chair from the Houston Forward Times, Karen Carter Richards. We also have Francis Page Jr., and even from the Washington Informer, we have the editor Kevin McNear watching. And Bobby Henry down in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, he says the psychology of police culture perhaps could change from a Black perspective if more Black and cultural sensitive psychologists were hired to weed out the sick cops during the psychological examination before they put on a uniform, a badge, and a gun. Your response, Attorney General Ellison?
He's right. So I just want to shout out to Kevin McNair. Because I grew up with Kevin McNair in the city of Detroit. I know I moved to Minnesota. Kevin moved to DC. I lived in DC for a while. So Kevin, if you're listening, thumbs up, brother. Y'all may not know this, but Kevin McNair is very fast runner. He was the best guy on our track team.
Is that right?
Still run, Kevin. Kevin, can you still move, man? I don't know. When he's a teenager,
we'll see if Kevin answers.
Anyway, that is an excellent recommendation. And as a matter of fact, it would be a powerful thing if the Black press came up with, 5 or 10, proposals and offered them collectively and published them in every one of your news outlets. I know that I was going to say papers, but I know now y'all are online on the paper, podcast. Y'all are multimedia at this point. But I think that it would be good to take that idea together with a bunch of other ideas that you all have collected and then jointly publish them to the world, because you have a mighty, mighty, mighty voice, man. The world listens to you. When you speak in one voice, the world listens to you. And so I think that would be a good idea. Why not take that great idea about psychological testing and join it with other ideas and propose a slate of ideas and say, this is what we think will work. We're in touch with the people. We know what people think because we're in touch with them every day. These ideas will work. Do them. Do them in
exactly. General Ellison, we're going to do that. We have our national conference. We're doing it virtually this year, July 8th and 9th. And you've just made a recommendation that we're going to accept. I know our chair, Karen Carter Richards, is listening, and we're going to publish that list at our virtual convention, July 8th and 9th.
Well,
and just so you know, I'm sorry, just so you know, Attorney General Ellison, Kevin McNair says he's now fast on the computer. So
Kevin lets his fingers do the walking now.
Keith, I wanted to ask you as a follow-up, from your vantage point as the prosecutor, as the AG, what does justice look like in this case?
In this case, it looks like conviction on all counts. That's what it looks like. As you know, we cannot control the outcome. At one point, this case will go to the jury, and then it will be in the hands of 12 Minnesotans. But what we can control is doing every single thing in our power to put forth the strongest case we can, and we are committed to doing that. But I would say that justice absolutely includes justice in this case, a successful prosecution, but it's far bigger than that. If you talk to people out there while they're protesting, they're like, because I identify, and because, this problem is too serious. Think about this for a minute. Martin Luther King talked about police brutality. So did Malcolm X. So did the Nation of Islam. You could even argue that the Black Panther Party started because of concerns around police treatment of African Americans in Oakland and in other places. Diverse political belief system. We get up and argue over, what's the best way forward within our community, because we're diverse thinkers, of course. But, one thing we're unified on is that this is a serious historic problem. You could say, oh, Minneapolis has got a real problem. Yeah, well, how's Chicago doing with it? Laquan McDonald. Okay, so maybe in South Carolina, everything's chill. Walter Scott. What about New York? Oh, well, we do remember Abner Louima. Whoa, in California, sunshine, everything's cool there. Rodney King. So, it's a nationwide problem. It is a historic problem, and it's a problem that's long overdue. And, I think it was a person whose beliefs I definitely disagree with, but they made a very good quote that all of us should get familiar with. I don't think anybody on this call is a fan of the thinking of Milton Friedman, but he said, only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the action that are taken depend upon the ideas that are lying around, that I believe is our basic function, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. We are now in the moment of the politically inevitable, brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
we gotta absolutely get ideas forward and get them forward now, because what did not seem possible 2 weeks ago now is on your doorstep, and the window will close.
Exactly. So, Stacey, we got about a few minutes left. We got thousands of people who are listening. You want to get a couple more questions in before the Attorney General has to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Hiram Jackson is watching as well, but the NNPA's own Claudette Perry, she speaks about she wants to see which of those conglomerates, and she's talking about the big companies like Target, et cetera, going to step up and support the African American community economically. Now, in your office, I know you crack down on businesses that are doing wrong, put it that way. But what type of influence your office might have to get these companies on board with doing business with African Americans and doing something for the African American community?
Well, that's an excellent question. I mean, it's kind of a question, right? Here's what I can tell you. If ever we get a report that there's a company that is engaged in deceptive trade practices, wage theft, anything wrong, we don't just try to get monetary damages. We often seek injunctive relief. So if we say, look, you want to settle this case, you better open up your vending pool and get some Black businesses in there. That's something that I would urge every single person on the call to do with their attorney general. And again, we have 5 Black attorney generals. Actually, there's 7, but there's 5 Black Democratic ones who I talk to. In DC, there's Carl Racine, awesome brother. Tish James, wonderful, wonderful sister. Kwame Raoul in Illinois, great guy. And Aaron Ford in Nevada, and then in the Virgin Islands. And then, of course, in California, Javier Becerra, my friend, he comes from Mexican-American heritage, and Hector Balderas. And in Connecticut, there's William Tong, who's Asian-American. So the point is, before this was like a lily white job, right? And now things are changing. We also got some people who are white, but who really are open to racial justice. Dana Nessel in Michigan got in trouble from the right wing because she talked about the racism and the disproportionate impact on Black people in Detroit. And she's the Michigan AG. Let's get an NNPA relationship with some of the attorneys general that really want to do justice and talk about how we pursue an economic agenda that is fair for all people. Telecommunications. I mean, look, how many companies are like, well, we don't want to put up infrastructure in your community. In COVID, all the kids got to do distance learning. Some of them don't even have web access. So this is a thing that we can work together on. But I will tell you, so much of our work is complaint driven. We don't just go around and do audits on who's doing what. We are complaint driven. So if there's an injustice going on, but there's nobody to complain about the injustice, it might go on unless you all, the advocates and the leaders, tell us this is a problem. Let's get a relationship with NNPA and begin to talk about how we can be stronger advocates for everyone. And then let me also say, a lot of people in the corporate world have, talked to me all the time. I don't talk out of school. If you talk to me, you can trust that the conversation is going to stay between us. But I can tell you that there have been a number of folks who I would put you in touch with who said, what can we do? What can we do? And so let's do that. I mean, look, this country's been good to corporate America. Many of them don't pay no taxes. Bank of America don't pay no taxes. Boeing don't pay no taxes. Amazon don't pay no taxes. I mean, they've made billions of dollars based on our customership, and they need to bring it back our way to help make sure that we have shared prosperity in America. So I think the question is excellent, and I think it's just such a good question. It can't be captured in this one talk, but let's work on that.
Absolutely. We definitely will follow up.
Yeah, and Attorney General Ellison, the strategy to that the president and the administration, the current administration, has to pack the judiciary with conservative judges for lifetime appointments. Can you talk a little bit about that, because that is really important?
Well, look, I'm asking you to tell all these young lawyers who say, "Oh, I want to be a public defender. I want to be a corporate lawyer. I want to be we need you to be a judge." Now, I don't want to be no judge. I'm an advocate. I mean, you got to be who you are in this world, right? But there's a lot of them who I think would make awesome judges. In Hennepin County Court, young man by the name of Todd Barnett, chief judge, first Black chief judge. I went to law school with him. I'm so proud of Todd. He's fair-minded. He's good. I'm not asking him to hook me up. He won't do it. He has too much ethics for that. But a fair case is all we're looking for. We're just not look. All we want is a fair shot, because the thing has been tilted against people who've been on the other side of the power equation. So we need to encourage people to run for judge. Also, and I'll say this is my own political perspective. As many of you know, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I was proud to support Bernie. I still support Bernie. But I do now, I am going to support the Democratic nominee because, even if that person was not my first choice in the primary, they're going to make an appointment to the Supreme Court. They're going to decide how we run the post office. They're going to decide how the U.S. military is used. Will it be deployed against Americans on American soil? Or will it be or not? There's so many questions that have nothing to do with the personality of the person that are really important. So when it comes to that issue, I'd say that, we've got to just make sure that we operate in our own interests, and I will be doing that.
Yeah,
very good.
We got a couple of minutes left, but I want Dr. Chavis and Al McFarland to get in another question before we close out, and we can start with Al McFarland if you don't mind, Dr. Chavis, and we'll let you close it out.
Very good.
Keith, any advice or comment? How does our community analyze where we are? In the past, when protests led to mayhem or riot, however you want to call it, there was a shaming associated with that dissuaded or had us speak badly of each other. What I'm hearing right now, though, is elders and ordinary people praising young people for stepping forward and being able to distinguish from their righteous engagement and from the mayhem that may be being created by a certain few who have inserted themselves in our community, in our protest, for their aims and not for our aims. What are you telling people? How do we handle that and move forward in that kind of environment?
What I'm telling people is that, protest is the only way anything ever happens. If you don't protest, what did Frederick Douglass say? Where there is no, he didn't say protest.
Demand. He said
no demand, there's no justice. Where there's no progress. You got to do it. It's just indispensable. People in power are never going to give you anything out of the kindness of their heart. You got to fight for it in this place. Let me just say that where are we in this country? Look, remember, we spent 243 years in straight up bondage. Generations of Black people were born, lived their whole lives, and died in bondage, right? That's just the deal. Now, for 100 years after that, we lived in Jim Crow segregation. There's only been 55 years where Black people were not under the official, legal, second-class citizenship or captivity. Only 55 years. I'm 56. I was born in apartheid. Some of you will remember signs on the road, whites only. Come on now. And so since then, there's been disparities in everything else. I would caution the protesters to not necessarily embrace some of the arson and looting and damage, because we have people on tape, evidence that they were never part of the protest demonstration. They're not part of it. They don't want to be part of it. We got people on film wearing all Black. They're Caucasian. They're not wearing COVID masks. They're wearing tear gas masks, and they're tearing up property and throwing incendiary devices. The protesters are making chants, handing out flyers. They're protesting. They've got T-shirts on. They're showing their outrage. But there are people doing damage that protesters have nothing to do with. So I'm a little bit reluctant to tell the protester demonstrator to say that riot is the language of the unheard, because some of the stuff going on, they don't have nothing to do with. There are people literally trying to tarnish the image of the protest by committing mayhem, and people don't distinguish between them and the protester. And then even some protesters will get up and justify that. I'm like, you ain't got nothing to do with that. Your aims are something very different from those people. They are called agent provocateurs. I counsel my dear young brothers to read the book COINTELPRO. Then you're going to know that these folks, some of these folks who you're trying to explain their behavior, they're not angry young people who got over exuberant about the cause. They're literally criminals damaging and tarnishing the protest. Now, I think it's a failure of law enforcement that we haven't found these people and begin to prosecute them. That has got to begin much more earnest. I know they're working on it. I'm well aware that they have received information and tips, but there's got to be some people brought to account. And I think if we do find them, you will be a little shocked at who they are. And many of them would never be caught dead at a protest for justice for Black victims of police violence, unless they could be there to damage it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. So I just want to ask you, it's sort of a toss-up question because I know you know the answer to this, but it's very important to hear the Attorney General of Minnesota articulate, in your perspective, as we close out this live stream, how important is the Black press, Keith, to the future of America?
The Black press is the indispensable truth teller, griot, source of information, trusted information in an age of fake news, and so I am a strong fan of the Black press, and I want to commend you for, dealing with the digital age. I don't know any members of the Black press who are not, online and doing everything they could do. They're podcasting, they're nimble, they're quick, and they also are traditional in that they do continue to give people, newsprint, which some folks, that's how they want their news. But I would say that the Black press is a beacon, is a magnet because it attracts us. It's also a lighthouse, which is a light in a storm. And so please keep doing what you're doing, and please keep leading us and guiding us. We are in a new news age, but people are reading as much as ever. But they don't know what to read because we live in the era of fake news. Your Black newspaper can tell you what's really happening. So I think that it may be the only trusted news source that people can really rely on. So I think that is a real selling point. And so I thank you for having me on. And just know that, call on these other Black attorney generals and the Latino ones. I mean, I'm going to tell you,
we will.
Hector and Javier are awesome brothers. They understand the unity of the Black and the brown, and continue to do that because you guys are always been connecting the dots for people. And just know Tish James, she's an awesome interview. Y'all know that.
I know Tish. Yes.
Awesome. Carl Racine, Aaron Ford, articulate brother. And don't forget the Caribbean, they're down there too, and they're really doing what they do. So with that, I just want to say thanks for having me, and I'm at your service. Call me anytime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And just real quick, Attorney General Ellison, what you just said is backed up. When I called your office, they cleared your schedule in a hurry to do this, and we really appreciate that. You have been watching live our Black Press of America's interview with Attorney General Keith Ellison, who is heading the case against the officers who killed George Floyd. Thanks for watching. Attorney General Ellison, thank you again. Everyone stay well and stay safe.
God bless.
God bless y'all. Peace.